Welcome back to another episode of I'm Really Into That Stuff. This is the podcast that features me, Jana Stern, psychic activator, energy healer, and astrologer, as I delve into deep conversations with different folks in the holistic and conscious industries about the many beliefs and practices of spirituality, mental health, and what it means to be a human who's into that stuff in the 2020s and beyond. I'm Really Into That Stuff is excited to tell you that we have won one of the top 10 Esoterica podcast spots on feedspot.com. Check out the whole list at blog.feedspot.com/esoterica_podcasts for the whole list. Thanks to our friends at Feedspot for this incredible honor. Welcome to another episode of I'm Really Into That Stuff. I'm your host, Jana Stern, and I am joined today by my sweet friend, Liz Selke. I'm so glad that you're here. You are a tarot advisor, a healer, a Reiki master, a coach. You work with frequency. You're kind of an everything woman, but I know that your true magic, your true medicine has always been for many years tarot. And I'm really excited to dig into some of who you are and what you're all about. Please give a brief little intro of who you are and how you got into that stuff.
Hi, Jana. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's such an honor to be on the podcast and be part of everything that you are contributing to the world, because we need you and we need all the healers that we can get. How I got into this stuff is kind of a loaded question, I think, for a lot of, because there's just so much to say. And I would say that for a lot of people, they have awakenings. We hear about people having awakenings later in life. And for me, I'm a little bit of a different case, because for me, when I was a child, I was very aware of energies, spirits, very aware of this language that we call energy. And I believe that everybody, every single human being can speak this language. Some of us, it's a language, right? Mm-hmm. So in terms of energy, many of us come into this world and we are fully fluent. Yeah. Yes, this is our native tongue. We're fully fluent. And we start to realize by observing as an innocent 3-year-old child that not everybody speaks the language that we speak. And so when I was a child, very aware of energies, entities, etc., and realizing that I had an awareness that not everybody did. And so my childhood, I had incredible family, but the house that I grew up in, a lot of spirit activity. And I had to navigate that to the best of my ability.
The physical house you're talking about.
The physical house that I grew up in, yeah. It was a lot of spirit activity. And in a way, I'm glad that I had that experience.
Sure.
Because the awareness really trained me naturally, that I was aware of multiple energies. And so this notion of many people being asleep and becoming awake later in life, it's a very common theme that we see with clients and colleagues and people in the community. And that's a beautiful thing. But I think for many of us, we were already born with this language. And does that make any sense?
Yeah, it totally does. It feels like that's how I notice when I connect in with my soul family. I'm like, oh, you speak my native tongue. Yes. You speak this language of energy that is just there. And it's real for you in such a way that it's been with you all your life. Whether you like go through what I call your forgetting or not, it's there, right? And so and it's undeniable.
It's undeniable. And I also say, as a side note, that when we look at spiritual bypassing and the spiritual ego, a lot of people think, oh, well, I'm spiritual and someone else isn't. So there's some sort of hierarchy. And the problem with that is, if we really consider that energy is a language, which is how I would couch it, then it's just, if I speak a language and you don't speak that language, that doesn't mean that I'm better than you. It just means that I speak a language, but you can develop this later on in life if it either falls in on you or if you choose to delve into that and learn that language. And I think that's very important.
What's fascinating about that as you're speaking is that there are many people in human history that have learned a language and mastered that language better than people who are native speakers, because to them, they're called into that language, right? So from your perspective and what you're sharing, it's interesting because there are people who are quote unquote just waking up to the fact that there is a whole world out there, but this ego that happens in the spiritual community so often has people being like, been at this for so long. And like, Yeah, but that doesn't mean that the person who didn't wake up yesterday recognizing, holy shit, there are signs everywhere, that person couldn't master this language better than you or I or anybody else in this world.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. So
Yeah.
for me, before I got into studying tarot and energy when I was a child, it was a very complicated childhood, a lot of trickster entities in the house. And I had to navigate that. A lot of health issues in terms of I had very extreme asthma and multiple near-death experiences in my life, in my childhood. But what that taught me was that I was with my guides from 4 years old, having prophetic dreams, visiting my ancestors, visiting deceased loved ones when I was very young, and really in liminal space a lot. And this is a very common story that we see with healers and intuitives, is that they have a lot of trauma, they understand energy, and also they have near-death experiences or a sickly childhood. I check all of those boxes, but it's not a victimhood story. It's a story of I had to be in liminal space and having those, like constantly having extreme asthma attacks and being rushed to the hospital throughout my childhood multiple times a month, knowing that energy was playing a role in this. It actually helped to equip me with the skills of understanding liminal space,
Breath, probably.
my breath, and also being a multidimensional person and understanding that with the dimensions, I was accessing multiple dimensions all of the time. And that was just a regular day for me because we understand energy. And that was to me just part of my childhood. So when I was 14 years old, we changed houses, we did move. And I was concerned in the new house of, is this energy going to be different in a more safe household? And I was brought up in a Catholic household. So I went to the local church and I begged the priest, will you come bless the house? Will you bless the house? I'm coming from this very chaotic energy. And he actually did me a favor. He said, we don't do that anymore, but I'm going to train you as if you are a priest. I'm going to train you. And I was a 14-year-old girl. So he trained me how to make holy water. He trained me as if I was a Catholic priest. He gave me one of the greatest gifts of my life. And I went into the house, blessed the house, never had any other issues with chaotic trickster entities at all. And you would appreciate this, that there was a mezuzah on the door. And I told my parents, you're not to touch that.
And don't fuck with that, man.
No.
Don't
I'm
touch
like,
the mezuzah.
and I knew this. I was only 14. I was like, that is protecting the house and you will not touch the mezuzah. And they're like, if you feel so strongly about it, Elizabeth, we won't. So for me, as a child, I was very aware, and that priest trained me as if I was his equal. And he trained me. And while I was going through the motions of him teaching me and training me how to do it, I had flashbacks to past lives. I was like, I've been a priest many times. I've been a nun many times. And this multidimensional aspect was very clear to me as a 14-year-old girl. And from that place, the second half of my childhood was completely different from the first half. Very calm, very safe, no issues, no more health issues, no more near-death experiences. So to have that contrast really trained me. And I like to say sometimes from these experiences that I have a PhD in darkness for being in that house. And I don't regret being in that house because it trained me in the ways that I needed to be trained. And it gave me perspective on the light, because how do we learn how to recognize that we are the light is when we are in utter darkness, that we are the light. And so these moments in our lives when we have mental health issues, spiritual issues, we have to realize that the darkest hour, right? It comes before the dawn. So the end of the story is I found my first tarot deck and I saw it in a bookstore and I just saw it and I knew I have to master that. I don't know why.
How
it
old
was
were
not
you?
influenced. I was 14.
So that you were 14 when you found your first deck.
Yes. Right after moving into the house, blessing the house, starting high school. And essentially my girlfriend found out about this notion of the superstition of gifting someone their first deck. And she gifted me my first deck. And I still have the deck to this day. And I started doing readings and training myself.
Yeah.
And never thought that this was going to end up to be truly my life purpose. And so if we look back for all of us, if we look back on our lives, sometimes that little 14-year-old girl or boy or whoever you are, that person, that younger self, you actually are on the right path. You know what you're doing. You just don't think that in that moment.
Well, you're told you don't know, right?
Yeah.
Every adult in your sphere is like, oh, you don't know anything.
Exactly.
Right.
But when I look back on it, I was always on the right track. And I always say to my tarot clients, when they're lost and confused about a relationship or any kind of block or barrier, you are right on time. You are right on track with your life purpose. And you couldn't be late even if you tried. And I firmly believe it because I've seen it in spades. And I know you have too with your clients.
Sure. Yeah. You touched like so briefly on mental health. And I know you and I both have really been there for sure. And the darkness is something that, we both have played with quite a bit. I'd love for you to touch on how tarot has brought you out of that space, because I know that I often will, let me retract for a moment and step back and say, when clients come to me and they say, do you read tarot? My answer is no, because tarot shows you the shadow, oracle will show you the light. I have plenty of darkness in my life, and I can't play with tarot for clients, really prefer to bring out an oracle deck, because for me, the message is going to come through. I already have a serpent tongue, and delivering a message with tarot, it's going to sound like really harsh, more harsh than it probably would. So I use oracle to bring the light forward. I know, and I've had readings from you in the past, and I know other people who have as well. I know that you bring forth shadow in such a way that it's like you bring it in a beautiful gift, like in a box, to be like, hey, here's something that you probably need to look at, navigate this little nugget. And I know first, like, I'd love for you to talk about what that means for you. And then we'll kind of dig into some of the mental health that I know kind of comes in and around all of that for you.
Yeah, I think that you touch on an incredible thing. No matter how we are divining, right? Whether that is tarot, oracle, whether it is scrying, whether it is ruins, leaf reading is something I also do. Tea and tarot together. No matter what we are doing, it's very important to understand that this is I take these gifts extremely seriously.
Yes,
there's an ethical and moral code to what we do. And I don't want to say a lot, but okay, maybe that's not the right word. There are a lot of people in the spiritual community that really need to understand the spiritual laws and understand that when we have these abilities, and I believe these are abilities gifted to us by the creator, they are innate abilities that we have, but there are karmic consequences. And so when I'm reading for somebody, if you are asking me to read this photo of this person you've been on 2 dates with, like, to me, that, you know what I mean? When we're trying to just like read this other person, or if you come for a reading, it's about you. It's about your life. Of course, that would be about a core relationship, a partner, a child. Of course, it's going to be about that. It's going to overflow into those conversations. But when someone is coming to you for a reading, it is about them. And it needs to be about them. And sometimes when someone comes, they don't have a question. Most people, they may be on the cusp of something or on the precipice of something. But when they come to you, you should be able to read someone through those cards and navigate their truths and bring up exactly what they need to know. They shouldn't have to say a word. And if the reader is not looking for body language, they're not looking for validation, you should be able to sit there on the recording in silence, and I can channel and read those cards and tell you your shadow, your light, your triumphs, your blocks, your challenges, and direct you forward. But again, there are a lot of spiritual laws, and I know that better than a lot of people. The thing about tarot is it's going to bring up the dark. It's going to bring up the light. It's going to bring up all the colors of the rainbow. And you need to understand that when you give people information, and a lot of readers don't talk about this, is that you may know information before they do, if it's predictive. And in that sense, we cannot intervene with the agenda of someone's soul, or else we will pay the karmic debt. I work with Anubis, who is an Egyptian god, who, if anyone is aware of him, can research him. I'm a Libra, and he holds the scale of judgment. And at the end of life, it's this notion of weighing the ostrich feather against the heart. And if you've done a lot of good deeds, it's very balanced karma, and it's very
the ostrich feather is lighter than the feather.
Yes. And so for me, I have a direct line to Anubis. And so if someone asks me something and it is outside the scope or the realm of what they need to know right now, Anubis I'm clairaudient, and I will hear that that is something that I should not answer.
Right.
And a lot of the times, and a lot of readers don't talk about this, some readers, they may know a lot of things, but give away too much information. There is a lot of
oh yeah. And, oh my
right?
God. And then sorry to interrupt you, but like
No,
then
no.
what happens is they keep going to other people trying to be like, how do I get from A to B? Because you've now given actually from A to Z, because you've given me way more than I need to know now. And I can't make a move left or right.
Yes.
I'm terrified of the outcome. And
yes,
it will unfold regardless of whether or not I tell you. And actually, if I don't tell you, you'll navigate it more authentically than if I do tell you and step all over your toes. And now you don't know where to stand because I might step on you energetically again. Like,
exactly. I'll give you an example so that it's not so vague. I had a client that came to me for a relationship reading. It was online. One of my regular clients dating somebody. They'd maybe been together 2-3 months. She was like really all in with this person. And the question that she, at one point in the reading, she wanted to know about the longevity of the relationship. And she didn't see the cards right away because I'm showing them to her. And one of the cards that came out was the Tower, which of course I knew that this relationship would probably not last. Like it would probably be another 1 to 3 months. Here's where it gets, this is what I mean by discernment, and that we have ethics and morals that we need to follow as tarot advisors, or else we won't be paying the karmic consequences. So when that happened, I did take a photo of it to show her at a later date. It was timestamped. But I said to her, I actually don't want to answer this question because you need to spend sacred time with the soul. You have lessons to learn.
Right.
You have love to share. And this is a soul contract that needs to be enjoyed. And you need to be in the present moment of now with this individual soul. And I said, so I'm actually not going to answer that question, even though I knew the answer to the question. This is what tarot advisors and readers and intuitives need to take very seriously. Just because we know information, that it doesn't matter. I have due diligence to the creator that if I intervene with the agenda of someone's soul and give them information prematurely, and if I had said, oh, this is going to be over within the next 1 to 3 months, I think it's going to be combustible, and I think get your ducks in order. If I had told her that actually, A, I would have had to pay there would have been karmic consequences for me, but B, I have actually sullied that soul contract, and that is ethically and morally bankrupt, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that it's very interesting. I was talking the other day about how like we really are trying right now as a species to understand our reality. And this realm is very real. And many of us who do speak that language have always known it, or we feel it unconsciously and we don't know how to put words to it, but it's there.
Yes.
And what happens when you mess with it in that way, if you have a knowingness and you bring that knowingness to somebody else without them being prepared for it, what happens is you tear down their whole reality. You literally pull them out of the system that they're meant to like walk through.
Yes.
It's like you're
robbing them. You're robbing them of sacred time with the soul.
Right.
And maybe that person needed 1 to 3 months with that soul. And now you're getting in there. It's like, why is Liz here? Like,
and time is not like, it's so fictitious that how you process anything, if it takes you 1 month, 1 year, 10 years, 12 years, 30 years to process through something, so it is. Like,
exactly.
Time is not real anyway. So, and if I step in and interject and I'm like, well, you better figure it out because it's going to end. Like, first of all, life ends, everything ends. And me predicting your future, which is why when people ask me like, oh, you can read my thoughts, you can tell me the future. I'm like, I could, but I'm not going to because I won't want to deal with your bullshit.
Yes.
My energy. I'm good.
Exactly. And I would say there's another point I'd like to make on this. I agree with everything you're saying. Very much resonates with me. I would say that this client came back to me, one of my regulars came back to me. I think it was, I don't know, 2 months later, 3 months later, it combusted, et cetera, et cetera. And I then shared with her the photo, the timestamp photo. And she said, thank you so much.
Right.
She actually said, she got emotional and she said, thank you so much for not telling me that. And I said, I would never do that to you or any other client because you needed to fulfill that soul contract and you needed to learn those lessons over the extension of that 1 to 3 months. And you needed to stay on that timeline with that soul, with that connection to learn what you needed to learn and then part ways. And if myself or anybody else intervenes, it's highly problematic and unethical.
Yeah.
And we need to understand that when we are, whatever you want to say, when we are doing readings, tarot as an example, it will show me certain things. But my last point about this is that let's say, and this has happened before, if someone's asking about a future or whatever, it's very important to anchor people in the present moment. Our power is in the present moment. It is not in our past. It is not in our future. It is now. We need to be right out the gate. I am anchoring people in the present moment and looking at the cards now. However, of course, I can see what is coming in, energies, outcomes. Of course, I can see that. There's a way to navigate it. However, what I would say is, and this happens a lot, if someone comes to you, I'm having problems in the marriage, and you'll see that, let's say you see a card like the Tower or the 10 of Swords with like the person on the battlefield with 10 swords in the back, like these cards that are very clear, that's just one timeline.
Right.
And so, Jana, you and I both know we cannot, as readers, once again, attach somebody to a dominant timeline. We can explore that dominant timeline and say, well, if both of you don't do work and get help and go to therapy, etc., explore
intimacy, the end of the frame
exactly.
of your relationship, right?
Yes.
So,
and I know readers that when they're very flippant is the word,
yes.
and they would just say, oh, 10 of Swords, like this is done. You're done. And once again, they could just be ending a cycle. We all go through death and rebirth, especially in long-term partnerships. I have in mine.
Yeah.
And therapy or whatever you want to say, intimacy coaching, whatever works for you. There's many different tools at our disposal.
Sure. Yeah.
And the biggest thing with readings is if you see one of those cards, you can lean into that timeline, but you have to, in my opinion, anchor the client in the present moment and say, there are infinite doorways, infinite timelines, and infinite divine destiny. So this is about our aligning with the highest and purest vibrational frequencies, our highest timeline, and our highest divine destiny. And so it is. And that's what we're calling in for ourselves and for our clients, right? But to attach someone to a dominant timeline, which so many psychics and advisors do, it's premature to say the least. It's also limiting. We're limiting the perspective and the energy of a client when we could open them up to something higher. And within the next even 2 to 3 to 4 weeks, those cards could change. That outcome could change.
2 days.
We have
your mind. The cards will be changed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the notion of the power in the present moment is everything. If I see that the timeline is it's not looking favorable, I don't care. You cannot tell people what to do, and you don't want to align them with a dominant timeline. So you want to coach them, which is something else I do, mentorship and spiritual coaching, even without the cards.
Right.
What we want to do is really, I see myself as a boat launcher. We want to be launching people to sail their own ship. We do not want codependency with our clients. And even this word that that really is thrown around, empowerment, this word empowerment, you're empowering yourself. I am not empowering you.
Right. That assumes that I have power to give to you.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, no, the cards are here to anchor you in your power and open you up to all of the information. So to bring it back to this notion of the dark side of tarot, why I like the tarot is because it will tell me exactly what I need to know, but then I have to be in the right headspace and centered as a reader to know what information I can share and when to hold back. And we don't talk enough in tarot, I think, about like the dark is that when we know a lot, sometimes a lot of those pieces of wisdom are to be held in the silence of our hearts and not to be shared with the client.
Yeah. So that darkness is something that I think you have an understanding of in this way, because I know that you've really danced in it a lot. And I know that plays a lot of roles in your life and that it's shown up in a multitude of ways that are empowering and also have been challenging in the past. I'd love for you to talk about how tarot came to you through it or brought you through it, because I know that a lot of your journey has been about going back to your own energy and your own, like you were saying a moment ago, you really got to make sure that you're okay before you're giving to somebody else. And again, like energetic practices that a lot of people do not practice, they just give or take or whatever, blindly. But I'd love for you to talk about how you have come through your own darkness and how tarot has helped you in that way.
Yeah. So that's a good question. So I think whenever we're looking at any kind of, again, medium of divination, you're more pulled to the oracle. I do use oracle cards. They're fantastic. And I use them to layer readings as well. I'm definitely more of a tarot lover at heart. But for me, I started my relationship with the tarot when I was 14 years old. But really, if we just look at these decks, they're just pieces of paper. It's what is going on magically and energetically between us and this deck. And to me, it's looking into a pool of water and seeing our reflections.
Sure.
Well, these archetypes are alive and well. And so I just picked up the top card and it's the moon, right? So this is like, someone may see it and just be like, oh, that's the moon card. But for me, these archetypes, they're living, breathing archetypes. And so when I'm doing a spread for myself and when I'm delving into my own cards and finding my own wisdom to navigate my own individual path, not just for a client, but for myself and my own progress and evolution and empowerment, I see these cards as alive. These energies are alive. These are not merely archetypes. We are digging into the soul and we are allowing these energies to speak to us and through us. And then we can help a client or somebody else and help them. But the tarot, because it's like looking into a pool of water and seeing your reflection, it is going to show you the wrinkles and it's going to show you the beauty and it's going to highlight what needs to be seen and it's going to highlight the shadow and things that need to shift and change or things that have gone stagnant or things that we have procrastinated on. And it will also celebrate us every step of the way. And so I know when I do a spread from when I was 14 all the way up now into my adulthood, the cards are going to reveal exactly what I need to know right now. And for beginner readers, just pull one card of the day to start. What's my day going to be like today? One card. It is a guiding light. It is my North Star. And so in the darkness of anything, a breakup, mental health issues, confusion, whatever's happened in my life, the tarot has been a staple and it has been how I connect with my guides even deeper and how I see my way out of the darkness by allowing the cards to reveal how I can move forward. And
where is it? What is it that you're holding? What archetype are you embodying right now that's like pulling you? They're showing me like a big mast in the water that you just kind of keep gravitating to be like, all right, how do I get to the next? And I think that when we do, so like you and I both, like full disclosure, have had psychotic breaks. We've had psychotic episodes. So, and for myself, pulling myself out of that darkness, and it really had been like a solo journey of getting out of that, right? It's got to be you that pulls yourself out of whatever that darkness is. You
Absolutely.
need your support to hold you up as you start to topple, but really it's got to be you that's standing eventually. And I know that you've used many different tools along the way. And I'm curious for you, I know that you're also now, much like myself, in a really good place and feeling quite balanced and possible in a world where possible wasn't always available. And so I'm curious, what are the things that you are using to sort of amplify that possibility in your life and like ground you into that, because that's fluid, right? Today it's true, but tomorrow it might not be. So like cards, like this timeline is this way right now, and tomorrow it could be very different. So I'm curious what you're using in your day-to-day life that's helping you to not lose it, particularly in a world where kind of everyone has lost it.
Yes, in many respects.
Oh yeah.
There's a book, and we could talk more about it another time, but The Varieties of Religious Experience. This book really discusses the fact that one of the first psychologists, William James, to speak about when somebody has a psychotic break, right? Whether that is suicidal ideation, a manic episode, something like really major. He was one of the first people in the realm of psychology to actually give legitimacy to the manic episode and say, actually, this person may not be crazy. I think this person actually did have a vision of Jesus or encountered a guide, encountered an archangel. And he was one of the first people to say, what happens is after that religious experience, as an example, like a manic episode, what occurs is the person cannot ground this experience in the mental body in a safe, calm way. And then they go up into their higher chakras, as an example, and they have this whether it's a depressive episode, a manic episode, a suicidal ideation, or an attempt. Okay.
Yeah.
So he was one of the first people to actually say mental health is not just the physical body, the mental body, and the emotional body. He actually was saying, what if what that person experienced actually was something spiritual, but then it catapulted them because they couldn't ground that experience in the mental body in a calming, balanced way. They then had this like expression of being ungrounded, talking a mile a minute. I saw this and this, but they're not able to ground that information. And so
I say this about my father literally all the time, that he just cannot be in his body. He's had so many psychic experiences that he's now psychotic.
Yep. And this is exactly what you're saying is, I think there is a connection. I actually did a paper on the varieties of religious experience when I was at McGill. I did religious studies and English literature. I was a double major, and I did a dissertation on this. And it's so interesting because I did this dissertation before my first manic episode. So it was like I almost predictively, I was studying something and understanding it as a concept, and then I actually lived it, which is just kind of how this goes.
Totally. They're like, oh, did you want to learn about this?
Yeah. Oh, great. You read about it. You did a paper. You lectured about it. Now you're going to actually experience it.
Yeah.
Some people need a low level of medication. Some people have a chemical imbalance.
Absolutely.
And I think that we need to really look at mental health and realize that it's okay. Sometimes the goal is not to get off of medication. Some people need a low level of medication to ground. I am one of those people, and I'm happy to share that. The reason I want to be transparent is because I believe there is a link between mental health and spiritual gifts. There is a huge link. And when we talk about addictions and mental health or these links, we're missing the third part of the triangle. I think it's addictions and mental health, but it's also spirituality and true spiritual experiences. But we are now starting to explore this phenomena. We are now starting to open up our eyes and our vision to realize some people, they need to ground and they need a medication to stop the mental body from just like channeling all the time. And
that's beautiful. I love that. And I agree with you. I think my father is one of those people. I used to beg, take your meds, because I knew like intrinsically that was just necessary. You are imbalanced. You have too many experiences going up. You need to find a way to get back down, whatever that looks like. If you got to create an energetic ceiling for yourself, which is what medication does. I used to say, if this is normal, I operated like this.
Right.
These low lows, but here's normal. So if you need a shorter ceiling, get on whatever medication you need to be on to stay safe in this reality, because you have to exist within it. While you're speaking, I'm thinking to myself, like, it's super fascinating because I am fully with you. I mean, we said it before we started this podcast. I was like, like we're talking about the mental health kink thing.
Yeah, because because people, it's still it's a pyramid, like you said, and it's still very much stigmatized. And we need to be sharing our stories. Yeah. And we need to say to people, like, it's okay if you're on a low level, like whatever medication that you need to stabilize. But it's not just going to be that. Like for me, I need to take multiple salt baths a week just to like ground, cleanse, and not just the physical body, but like it's more about cleansing the energetic body. Yeah. And I need to meditate every day. Yeah. And because I'm always of service, whether I'm doing energy work or whether I'm doing readings or coaching, whatever I'm doing, like we were saying earlier, we can't only give from a full cup. And so we're going to have to, for me personally, that hermit card comes up a lot because I need solitude, introspection. I need to be swimming, having the salt baths, meditating, for nature walks. Like these things are part of mental health. These are stabilizers. These are tools that all of us can utilize to ground. And because I'm in the spiritual realm so much for my clients and just for myself in general, because that's who I am, we need to retreat more into the shell of, if we look at the crab energy, we need to retreat more into the shell to really do our self-care, to really check in with ourselves. And so we're going to have to say no more to people, places, and things for our mental health. Yeah. And that's actually going to aid in us being not just stable, but being fulfilled and able to help a lot of people.
Have you been seeing 1111 or repeating numbers or maybe butterflies or other messages from the universe everywhere and wondering what the heck it means? I know you've been told to trust your intuition, but maybe you just don't know where to start. I've created a course to help you to understand how to interpret the signs and learn to own your intuition. Get access to this 1-hour class now at solo.to/Jana Stern and click the Own Your Intuition link to get your access today. Have you been asking the universe what it is that you're meant to do in this lifetime? Maybe you're just going through a phase and need a little bit of extra guidance as to how to come back to yourself. Our birth chart is the map that shows us the path to ourselves and helps us to live in alignment with our purpose. If you want access to a natal chart reading with me, visit solo.to/Jana Stern and visit the janastern.com link to book a session today. Can I ask you something? One of the things that comes up a lot in a lot of communities that do talk about getting off your medication is this idea that you can't connect as deeply or that you can't go there or wherever there is on medication. Have you experienced that? And if so, what's your response to that? What's your vibe on it? Because you're pretty fucking magical, in my opinion. And so I imagine that even with a ceiling, your natural ceiling is much higher than most. So do you experience that?
Yeah, for me personally, like everything you're saying is in alignment. Because for me personally, my gifts are on 24/7. Yes. So I need a low level of medication because I need to get 8 to 9 or even 10 sometimes hours of sleep because I'm constantly channeling. Right. I'm constantly channeling for my clients and just in general all of the time, very similar to you. Yeah. In very different ways because you and I are very gifted and we have our own unique gifts that are different. But we're constantly utilizing our throat chakra. Right? We're constantly utilizing our crown, our third eye. We're constantly using the upper chakras, right? The causal, the soul star, the stellar gateway. We're constantly up there, which is why grounding is so important. And what you're saying is, to me anyway, I'm a testament to the fact that you can be on a very low level medication and be astral traveling every night. I astral travel every night. I meet with my guides. I meet with other people. I do work. I'm teaching on the astral. I wake up and I'm rested in my physical body and my mental body is rested, but I'm very aware of what happened. So for me, my visions, my meditations, my dream state, my astral travel, when I'm receiving energy work once a month for my own maintenance, my gifts are totally, fully turned on and tuned in and turned up at all of the time. So for me, if you find the right medication for you and everyone is different, it's not going, in my humble opinion, it's not going to impact your gifts whatsoever.
Yeah, I love that. I do want to chat a little bit about frequency and sound. I know that you're working pretty seriously with frequency and sound, and I mean seriously in the like scientific, serious kind of way. I've been saying this quite a bit, but the Einstein, I believe, said that science and spirituality are two sides of the same pyramid that meet at the top.
I completely agree.
Yeah, I don't know if I got to verify that quote, but anyway,
Yeah.
like, don't quote me on the quote, listeners, for me in the comments. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But, I believe that frequency is the access point from which we can heal physical issue, mental issue, spiritual issue, and it's all the same thing, right? This sound healing thing is very real. Music healing is very real.
That's it.
Been super grateful to be able to interview some really potent sound frequency practitioners. And I'm curious what your perspective is on it from where you're sitting today.
Yeah, this is an excellent question. I am a huge believer in frequency and sound healing. And it's so interesting because it came into my life. The first instrument that came into my life was a rattle that I bought in Tyendinaga, which is near Belleville, at this really amazing store called Native Renaissance. If you ever go through there. Yeah, in Ontario.
Yeah.
And if you ever go through there, give them a visit. And there was only one rattle at the time. And it's just like every other tool that we pick up on our journey. It was there. It was meant for me. There was no other rattles. There haven't been any rattles there since. It's not something they carry a lot of. And that became my first instrument, which opened me up to sound healing. And then later on, working with different practitioners in Toronto that were very gifted, I started doing events. So when I started being exposed to sound healing, I was reading the tarot in groups and talking about astrology. And I was working with other gifted practitioners that were doing the sound. And from there, I started to acquire different instruments, koshi bells, crystal bowls, Tibetan bowls, obviously the buffalo drum, these types of things, exploring frequency and sound. And I've been doing events in Toronto now very consistently since 2018. And we do them
through the pandemic too.
Yeah. And we do them for every new moon and full moon. And Jana and I know, through the pandemic, it was obviously in Toronto, we had a lot of lockdowns and I was even conflicted about it. The people that I worked with were very fantastic. Rosa Milando is one of them, and Dear Rosa, and then also Anthony Barr, who's a native flautist, and Melissa McQuillan. And we were doing events, and I'm the most proud of that in my career, if I'm being honest with you, because we showed up at a time and in a way for community when no one was doing it. There were very few people. People were doing things underground from health perspective. So I don't want to say that we the only. There were people that were doing things. We didn't know who was doing what.
Sure. It was very much like a secret society. And if you were when you didn't talk about other people because you didn't want to out anybody, nobody wanted to get anybody into trouble.
But even myself, if I'm being honest, it's just like the path, right? I doubted myself. I doubted if I was doing the right thing. And it wasn't, but we showed up for every moon from August of 2020 until June of 2021. And then I just continued the work and I never stopped. I just worked with different people. But that 1 year was so magical because it wasn't even about us. It was about the sacred container that we were holding for community. And people came to me at the end of that year, Jana, in May, June of 2021. And they were like, without this sound healing community and the tarot readings and everything, I had people that said, I would have actually taken, I don't want to say it, or I would have had X, Y, and Z, and you were my saving grace. And there were floods of people that told me that, and tears were shed in such a fulfilling way. And that's why I'm the most proud of that work that I did with those individuals that I mentioned. And I thought it was important to mention their names because these people were pivotal in my journey, because we realized this wasn't even about us. This was about showing up. And also when we do sound healing in group, it's very important because when we raise those vibrational frequencies, we are helping Mother Earth. Right now in Toronto, Mother Earth, we've got fires going on in Quebec, Alberta, etc. It's affecting the air quality, the sun, etc. Mother Earth is crying out for our attention and we need to help out in whatever way that we can. And so sound healing is actually aiding the planet. When we do groups, it's not just about the people. It's not just about the sacred container. It's about bringing those frequencies down into the crystalline core of Mother Earth and really trying to leave this world better than we found it. So I have seen in my private clients for sound and also in the groups that I still run every 2 weeks, I have seen people overcome mental health issues. I even have had clients that come to me regularly because they have high anxiety and they have brain buzz, where they hear a buzzing in their brain. I've had people from one session with me in private session for sound healing, and they're like, my brain buzz is gone. So I've actually seen physical benefits, not just mental health or energetic, but physical benefits of people being like, I can sleep better, I'm calmer. Sound healing really targets the parasympathetic nervous system to calm down so that people feel safe in their body, and it slows down all of the inner processes. It slows down the organs. It slows everything down. And then they can actually check in. Oh, wow, I actually am in my body. I actually am safe. And so I'm a huge believer in sound healing and frequencies because I see it every day in my practice. And I also manage a clinic that's really exceptional. And it's at Bloor and Spadina. If you're in Toronto, it's called New Pathways. It's a somatic therapy clinic. So the social workers and psychologists really believe in somatic work going into the body. The body is housing trauma, not just from this life, but from past lives, as we know. Sometimes we need to go in different ways. Some people can achieve that in psychotherapy and somatic psychotherapy, but we do EMDR and we do neurofeedback. And without getting too much into the details of that, neurofeedback specifically, I'm going to be training more in. And that is changing the neuroplasticity in the brain through very non-invasive, gentle frequencies. People that have had things like chronic fatigue syndrome and major trauma or PTSD have healed from doing neurofeedback. So I can't say enough about frequency and these different modalities that I'm throwing out there. Not everything is perfect for everyone. We've got to try different. Sometimes the most unlikely of people is going to unlock. They're going to unlock you. They might have a key, and it might be someone that surprises you. And maybe someone that you don't see coming, but there are so many paths to healing. And no matter where you are on your journey, you or I or anyone else, we have to realize that everyone has different locks and everyone has different keys and different pathways and different codes. And to be open and receptive, frequency is one that I find is very universal. It's cross-cultural, and sound and frequency doesn't even necessarily have to be. It's its own language, and it transcends culture. It transcends everything, and it actually unifies us as a collective consciousness and as human species on this evolutionary journey that we call life.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that it's interesting for some listeners, it's very sort of easy to be like, this sounds very woo-woo, right?
Of course.
But we truly are literally anatomically on an atom level made of the exact same stardust that is out there. And I've been speaking about this, the vibration and the frequency and the sound that the planets are making. For example, there is a constant resonance of each of the planets. We don't hear that all day long. I'm not talking to you listening to like Saturn in the background, although I am. And so being able to tune into what those frequencies are within our body, it is so individualized. And in comes my like astrology brain. It's so individualized because these things show up in our lives so individually. So it's very easy to be like, oh, it's all woo, and astrology maybe doesn't help that. But
you know, this is a very interesting point. Like, people have come to me either in groups or in solo, and like, they're not on the path, so to speak. They don't meditate. They're not into these things. They're not into tarot.
They're not into that stuff.
They're not into that stuff. Yeah. They're opposite of us. They're not into this stuff. Exactly. Yet they come to one event and they're like, you just read my cards. You don't even know me. How do you know from one card exactly what's going on with me? You've read my soul. And I've had people in sound baths that have they release so much in one session. I've had people come to a sound baths that don't meditate at all, don't pray, right? Like talk to their guides. Clearly, they haven't tapped into this language or these gifts yet. And they come to one sound bath, and I've had even somebody who time traveled back to a childhood memory that actually was traumatic when she was 4. She changed the memory to something positive. She literally changed her past. And this is somebody that is quote unquote not into that stuff.
Right.
And in front of the group, she said, I don't know what just happened, but I just want to let you know that you actually, through this journey of the sounds, carried me backwards to change my past. And I feel more empowered now in this moment than I ever have. And these are the stories that you hear, and they change your lives. And when it changes my life to hear these stories. But then we carry these stories with us because they become part of you, because someone else's triumph through the medium that you're offering, it's your triumph too. You're celebrating it with them.
Yeah.
And you feel it as if it's you, even though it's not. You're like, yes, you did it. Like you did the work. You opened up to the medium and you allowed the frequencies to do that, but you did it. I opened the door, you walk through it. It's not about me.
Yeah.
And that's where people get it all twisted. But
yeah, that's of being a real healer, is watching other people heal and being like, you did that.
Yeah. And if you think about it, our guides, whatever you want to call our ancestors who love us, our deceased loved ones, archangel, whoever we're working with, they're doing that with us. They can guide us and give us suggestions, but at the end of the day, we have to do the work, and we're either going to walk through those doors or not, or align with those timelines or not, but they're cheering us on every step of the way. And that's how we should be looking at our clients. I'm cheering you on. I'm advocating for you. I can guide you, but at the end of the day, your choices are yours and yours alone, but your triumphs, you better believe I'll be holding your hands, and I will be celebrating it energetically as if it's my win. Not that it's mine, it's yours, but the feeling of the triumph and being so proud of somebody from that higher perspective is, to me, the most fulfilling part of my life. So I would say the sound healing, what it offers is unbelievable. I've had people, again, when I've done them in schools, because I've had a lot of work in education. Yeah, I've had people that have come out and, again, don't pray, don't meditate. They're not into this stuff. And they come out, and I had one of my colleagues say, you unearthed a happy childhood memory that I had buried in my unconscious mind. That he was like, he actually went back in time to a very happy memory, and he shared in front of the group. He's like, Liz, you gave me one of my happiest childhood memories back that I didn't have access to. And I was like, no, you accessed it through the frequencies. You time traveled. You did this. I didn't do it. I opened the door. You walk through it. It's the same thing. But when you hear these stories time and time again, it is the most fulfilling part of doing this work.
I love that. Well, I think that I've said this to you many times. I love the way that you do your work. I think that you really work in integrity, and it's really been beautiful to get to share this with you. Please share with the people, before we wrap up, how people can find you. Where are you on the internet, and where can they find you? And also, how can they support you in your business right now?
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the podcast. It's just, there's so much that I am in alignment with you, and I respect everything that you do. And it's very interesting you coming into my life at the time that you did, and how gifted you are. And you're very multidimensional, very gifted in so many ways. And yeah, there's certain parts of our journey that we've shared that are very near and dear to me. I'll leave it at that. But it was just such an honor to be here.
I'm grateful that you could join me.
Yeah. And just to see your journey and you evolving, right? That's what this is all about. It's supporting each other, but we all have different gifts, and we're all very unique. And there's only one of us. Each one of us is very unique, and we've got to fine tune that as we grow and as we heal. So you guys can find me on Instagram, and my Instagram is elysium.liz. So it's ELYSIUM. So Elysium is, in Greek mythology, when we cross over, it is the place where we rest. And so it's called the Elysian Fields in Greek mythology, or Elysium. And so my business is basically that through my services, whether it's tarot or coaching, energy work, sound healing, or I'm teaching tarot, these types of things, whatever you're doing with me, again, I'm just launching that ship that is yours for you to sail.
Right.
And so no matter if you feel that you have a block, if you feel that you would like a reading or energy work, I am based in Toronto. I do online and in person, and I also do sound healing events as well that are very powerful in Toronto. So if you're interested in anything, you can send me a direct message on Instagram at elysium.liz. So I like to just think like we don't have to wait to cross over to access whatever you want to call it, nirvana, bliss, fulfillment. Yes, we're going to have challenges. Yes, we're going to go through the peaks and valleys of this life. But the point of my business and the point of all of my services, what unifies them and unites them, is the fact that I like to guide people to access that state of Elysium now. And we can, even amidst all of the challenges that will continue to happen as we progress and evolve. So you can find me there. I think that's the best way to contact me through Instagram. I have a website as well. It's a work in progress, but my website is elysiumliz.com as well, if you want to check out my services. And if you have any questions, I would be honored to answer them. Thank you so much for having me, Jana.
I'm so grateful that you were able to join me. Thank you all for listening. I appreciate all of our listeners. Every single week that we launch these, it's always so special to get to share these conversations. Please do give us a like and a follow, and we will see you again next time. Thanks for listening to another episode of I'm Really Into That Stuff. You can follow along with us on Instagram at I'm Really Into That Stuff or on Twitter at That Stuff Pod. And be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. If this episode resonated with you and something that you're really into, share it with someone you love. Sending you strength, peace, love, and light until our next episode.